Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Media Show. I'm Nick Palavito. I'll be your host for today. And today we're going to be discussing Trump versus Biden. What a surprise. That's been dominating the media and will continue to dominate the media until something happens. And with that, we're going to go around the world and bring in some of our panelists. First of all, we're going to head to LA and bring in Rick Rosner, a former writer for Jimmy Kimmel Live. And then we're going to the other side of the world and bring in Shaquille Latimer, who's usually very quiet, but we've been able to get him to speak a little bit, to give the view of Australia about what's going on in this. And so with that, our topic today, of course, is it could be a world edition topic or a world politics topic. It is Trump or Biden. So
I'm I'm Australian, so I'm not really familiar with the United States. So who are these people you're talking about? I haven't heard of them. Trump and Biden, you said? I'm not familiar with those guys.
Right now, I think 99% of the people in the United States could not name the prime minister of your country, Australia. Okay.
It's right. He's not worth naming. He's not worth naming, so that's fine.
Honestly, we don't know who they are. And frankly, I'm not sure if they care who they are. So, when it comes to what goes on in Australia, you did make a very...
Can I just remind you Americans that when you guys, drop nuclear bombs on countries and when you have this big nuclear arsenal, you get the raw materials from us. So careful now.
Okay, but the thing that you made a lot of sense, okay, that you told our audience, is that you said there's other people in the world besides the United States of America. Because as you know, for the people that live here, we do not recognize other countries or the existence.
that was just directed at Tovi when he was trying to have a crack at my friend Joel Jamal from Turning Point Australia.
Well, but the thing is, but Shaquille, it's true. Okay, in other words, like when it comes to Australia, if you ask people here, is Australia a democracy? Half of them wouldn't know. If they pointed out on a globe, I've got a globe up there, they wouldn't know where your country is. They'd be going around, Australia.
No, they know it's down under. That's what they know, right?
They know it's down under. They know it's down under somewhere, but they don't know where it is. And if you ask the prime minister, I would say 99% don't have a clue who your prime minister is. So anyway.
The sad thing is, and there was a report that came out recently, if you ask every Australian who the first president of the United States is, they can tell you straight away. If you ask every Australian who the first prime minister of Australia is, wouldn't have a clue.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
The only thing I know in Australia is you've got a bunch of kangaroos running around. We see
kangaroos, they got koalas, they got a number of other things as well. So there's a number of animals that are running around there. But
we've got an animal. We actually have an animal here, which I think is American. I think this particular animal is an American politician. It's called a wombat. And when things go wrong, the wombat actually has a hardened ass. And so what it does is it digs a hole and it sticks its head. It's like, I'm not making this up, but it actually buries itself in the sand or in the dirt, and it just leaves its ass sticking out, which is a hardened ass so that it can't get attacked. And I think I'm sure that must be an American politician that has morphed into an animal. I'm sure that's what's happened.
Wombats also poop cubes. So they can.
Oh, do they? I didn't know that. Do they?
They poop cubes so they can mark their territory, because if they pooped around, the turds would roll away. But then
I've got a quick question because I've actually got to bounce.
Hang on, are you making that up, Rick?
No.
How does it form? How does it form? What is it got, like a square ass or something? Like, how does it form a cube?
We got to figure out his kidney system and then intestines and all along those lines.
Science.
That would be how it was done through it.
Hang on, Mark. I want to hear the science from Rick.
So the scientists get to the bottom of the poop issue. Distinctive intestines mold feces into sharp-cornered poop. Wombats are great because the older they get, the bigger they get. Like the world's oldest wombat is, I don't know, like 40, 50 years old, and it's like 4 feet across, and they're adorable. You guys have the cutest animals.
You know, they do have cute
Yeah,
animals.
you know what, Rick? I'm going to personally fly you to Australia and introduce you to the Tasmanian devil, so you can see how cute our animals are. I'll just remind you guys. I'll just remind you guys in California that if you think that things kill you in Florida, wait till you get to Australia. Everything kills you in Australia.
Well, like kangaroos are cute, but they box. They will punch
they box.
you
They
out.
do a number of other
They
things.
will put
Oh,
you in
they
a
also have a
headlock
box
and
jellyfish.
hit you in the
that's not
Hey,
good.
just really quickly, because I got a more media. Well, I got two media questions to ask, since it is the media show and everything. But there is accusations going around, because you know the folks that are part of the conservative movement love having these different theories. So apparently, it is not Mexicans that we need to be worried about, because there is a new theory that is out there that ISIS is recruiting Africans to flood the U.S. So apparently they are being flooded by Africans in the U.S., and this is part of a terrorist plot. So this is something that I saw recently, according to some conservative news sources. So I don't know whether anybody else has seen
Rick,
this.
you're a Democrat. Can I ask you why you would have any opposition to building a wall to keep Mexicans out?
Okay, the only
Like-
reason.
like-
hold on.
I haven't finished my question. Okay, you answer that, then I'll finish my question.
All right. So my only opposition to the wall is that there are better ways of keeping people out, because the southern border, is 2,000 miles long.
Now, Rick, why don't we look at the science here? Okay, the Chinese built a wall thousands of years ago, and you don't see any Mexicans over there.
No,
Well,
right. That wall,
Hold on a second. Speaking of science, Shaquille, wait a second.
Hold
Speaking
on,
of science,
let me explain. Because 1,400 miles of the border is the Rio Grande River, and you got to figure out a way to stop people crossing the river, and a wall often isn't the best way to do it, because if you put up a wall, you can't really put it up in the middle of the river. If you put it up on land, then you're causing some
Well,
form.
you could put it up in the middle of the river and turn it into a hydro facility, right? So you keep the immigrants out, create energy at the same time. I mean, I think it sounds brilliant.
hey,
Well,
Rick and
there's better.
Shaquille.
Hold on. Let me finish my point. That if you try to build it on land, then you're stopping a bunch of farmers from being able to get to the river that they need. There's a wall is good for the 600 miles. That is not
Rick,
the river.
I'm trolling here, buddy. Come on now, relax.
Okay, all right.
But Shaquille, since you're trolling and everything, who exactly is building this wall? Because that's what you asked me that question. Because last time I checked, the majority of the people that are in the construction space are those that are in the Latin American community. So are you really going to build a wall to stop your own neighbors from coming across the wall and everything? So that's
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Like I used to be really special. This is probably the immigration. I used to be so special, right? That's why I left Australia, went to Switzerland, because it used to be once upon a time that I was the only dude that looked like me, that had my accent, that looked like me. Now everybody looks like me, and because of affirmative action, they're all in power. So, like, there's nothing special about me anymore. So, like, if I'm the only one, I want to keep all the rest of them out. Go away. I was here first. Leave me alone. Right?
So you're going to keep the rest of them.
So if you're talking ISIS sending Africans
Yes.
across borders, you should be looking at Europe, because Europe is north of Africa. They're the ones who get all the Africans. America is north of South America. So if ISIS wants to infiltrate America, then they need to, talk to Brazilians or Uruguayans or Costa Ricans.
You know, the theory
But there is an element, Rick. I hope that you'll admit there is an element of instability that occurs when you have the sort of mass migration that's occurred in the last 4 years. Which, by the way, I actually, not my country, I actually don't have that much of a problem with it, because a lot of it was sort of an overhang for the lowered amount of immigration that occurred during COVID. So it's actually not as dramatic as it seems when you just look at the headline rates. However, the way it's been done is not great. And I sort of come back to, we had this beautiful young lady that came on. She's Indian, that came on a few years ago, and she was a dreamer. And Mark asked what my comments were, and I was like, oh, what do I say here, right? She came over to the United States when she was a kid. She was educated in the United States, and she had a good job, and she wanted to start her own business and would be a great addition to the United States. And I don't want to see, someone like her, be forced to go back to, her technical home country. However, I think it also needs to be factored in that there is, undoubtedly another kid her age who lives in India, whose parents didn't break the law, who have waited in the queue for 10 years or 15 or 20 years, who doesn't have the ability to say to the government, hey, I was educated here. Hey, look at the great economic contribution I could make, because they didn't have the opportunity in the first place. And that's the thing. I think that people and the media, I think, does a very poor job of actually looking at the people that get hurt, because it's very difficult to measure something that you can't see. It's very difficult to measure what you don't know. I used to make that argument during COVID. A lot of friends of mine were very anti the COVID vaccination. They weren't anti-vaxxers. They were just anti the COVID vax because they didn't trust it. And I totally could understand why, because I think it was very poorly handled by big tech, very poorly handled by big media, very poorly handled by governments. They should have just said, look, we don't know. This is the best that we've got at the moment. This is the best the best that we can offer right now. They should have just been honest about it. But they got labeled all these different names. And I think that was very, very damaging. Just be honest. Just explain to people what the situation is.
All right,
and what a lot of my friends would say is, well, and actually some people that I know even today will say, oh, we've got heart palpitations and this and that. And I'll say, yeah, but how many people would have died, or how many more severe things would have happened had we not had this mass rollout of the vaccination? You can't measure that. See, the media can't say, hey, Rick, 3 streets over from you at number 15 Smith Street, there was a guy there called John, and had he not have had the vaccine, he would have died. You can't measure that. You can't measure what didn't happen. And that makes it very difficult, I think, for people to be able to assess where they're at.
Well, we need, in America, is paralyzed by, the Congress isn't functioning right now. It's evenly divided. Nothing can move forward. And there are too many jackasses in Congress. We can fix the border if we had people who weren't idiots. And who don't want to, and who have a stake in not fixing it so they can make people angry. And the deal is, hold on, so 25% of the world, of the countries in the world, have declining populations. And it's going to be 75% of the countries in the world in 20, 30 years. We're just not making as many babies as we used to worldwide, which means there are opportunities, once you get the borders under control, to welcome a bunch of talented people in, because we will have room for them.
But Rick, that's a terrible idea. I always talk about this as such a bad idea. Like, okay, so my mother comes from a family of 4. Her father, my grandfather, comes from a family of 13. I'm an only child. And so far, I don't have children. Hopefully, God blesses me with them one day. What we're saying is the more affluent people become, the less children that they have. There is a societal problem here. Yeah. And I think there's got to be something incredibly insulting to young people when they look at a world where it's really hard for them to have the same sort of lifestyle that their parents had. They can't afford to buy a house and to have kids and to do all those sorts of things. They get their parents, their grandparents, people like Nick. Well, when I was at school, I got a job at the local ice cream shop and I earned $35 a week, right? Even though I was a trust baby, and I paid my way through college. It's like, yeah, nope. Like you want to go get a job at Baskin and Robbins today and see if you can pay your way through college? Bullshit, right? So young people have got it so hard, and then they go, well, when I turned 21, I got married, and I had 23 children, and I survived on one single income, and my wife, your mother, stayed home and baked cakes and looked after the kids and cooked food, and it was fine. We could do it on one income. And now you two kids, are working. You're earning $150,000 a year each, so you're in the top 10% of income earners, and you can't even afford to pay for your apartment in LA. What's wrong with you kids? Right? So then they say, oh, hang on, I'm at the end of my rant. Just let me finish. So then they say, oh, well, now that you're not going to have any kids, who's going to pay into Social Security to keep us solvent? And, you're having a nice retirement. Tell you what, kids, here's what we're going to do. We are going to go to the poor countries and import them en masse and wonder why young people today are feeling disillusioned.
So I'm not disagreeing. Hold on. Let me hold on.
Mark, let me finish my rant. I went on for a bit there.
Let me talk.
I'm going to run to another meeting, and you can talk all day long. Okay. I'm going to run to another meeting. But just really quickly, the other question I was going to ask about Media Monday, because I was curious y'all's thoughts around this before I have to run to my other meeting, is what is our thoughts about pre-planned questions? I'm not a big fan of it. There's a couple of anchors, including some at I think it was a station in DC, or it might have been Philadelphia, that quit their job because they accepted the questions that Biden presented to them. I think probably even happened with Stephanopoulos.
Mark, you're a Democrat. Don't bring this sort of a question up. You need all the help you can get right now. Okay, so don't bring this question up because I'm going to have to go, it's terrible, and then you're going to get upset with me. So you're a Democrat. It's amazing. George Stephanopoulos is fantastic, and the American media, unlike all the rest of the countries in the world, the American media are so trustworthy.
Hey, Nick,
thank goodness
I'm not a big fan because I've had people ask me, and I try to avoid them, even though there have been a couple that have sidewinded me into getting those questions. But I, as a person that was studied journalism at Marquette, am not a big fan of pre-planned questions because I think that you lose a little bit of your objectivity and you also use a little bit of the true nature of journalism. But that's just me.
So Mark, are we still talking? Are we still talking about U.S. media?
Yes.
They don't have any credibility to lose. What are you talking about?
So here, I have experience with pre-planned questions.
Yes.
Every late night show, every interview show pre-asks the questions because that way you get the best answers out of your movie star who's visiting your show and has 7 minutes to say something funny and plug their movie. Now that's way different from a presidential candidate, but with Biden, with Trump, there's blame all around. You can blame Biden and his people for hiding that he's got age effects. You can. This
sounds like when I was in year 6. When I was in year 6, I had this crush on this girl in year 5. Gorgeous girl. And I wanted to know what would happen if I asked her out, not just on a date, but if I asked her out to the primary school, what you would call a prom.
Somebody to ask on your behalf.
No, but not to ask her on my behalf, but just to ask her what she would actually say, right? And I had it heard back to me that she would actually say yes. So I then went ahead and asked her, and she said yes, and she couldn't come because she was in year 5 and I was in year 6, and so it was actually our prom, and she wasn't allowed to come to it. And it was dreadful. It broke my 11-year-old heart at the time. She was 10, I was 11. It was awful. But that was a pre-planned question. So, look, if your president has the same mentality and emotional strength as we had when we were 10 and 11, I would suggest that you might have a problem and maybe the media should report on that. But I was ranting before and you wanted to respond. So over to you, Rick.
No, I was going to agree with you on a lot of this stuff where my university, my big in-state University of Colorado, cost me.
Are you from Colorado?
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Oh, you actually moved to California by choice.
To work in TV. Also, my wife's from California. California is nice. Now, we have some homeless people, but I'm in my
Like,
house, my
absolutely.
big nice house. I don't see homeless people right now. So, but anyway, it was $1,500 a year. So yeah, it doesn't compare. USC is now $80,000 a year. But the deal is,
Hey, you
hold on.
leave USC alone. USC is fantastic. The University of Spoiled Children is amazing. It's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorite 3 universities in the United States.
Okay.
And I can name a couple of sororities that have gorgeous girls in them.
My wife went to USC, so you guys.
Oh, what was
be
their
careful.
sorority?
I'm married.
What was
I'm
their
married to
sorority?
USC. What?
What was
What's
her
her
sorority?
sorority? Just a minute. I don't know detail.
All right, but okay. The deal is that the world economy is wildly shifting and will continue to do so. You can't. I don't know how you make people have more babies, and you got to accept the reality that that developed nations' populations are stable or declining, and that there's all these factors. Old people in America, we talk about this all the time, they have all the money. The boomers have 90% of the money.
Or more.
Gen Z doesn't have.
Yeah, but Rick,
I haven't
hang on.
answered your question, Shaquille. Alpha, Delta, Pi.
Oh, Alta, yes, they're not bad, those girls. The Gamma Theta B girls are a lot more fun. At least she's not a Delta girl. Rick, look, I agree with you, but as you get older,
yeah.
Well, I'm single, Nick, so I study sororities.
Oh, you study sororities. Yeah, I'm not a
but Rick, as you get older, you accumulate more assets and you accumulate more wealth, right? So I don't think that the boomers having all the money is necessarily that big a problem. But what I do think is a big problem is that young people are being forced to try to, be here when they should be here, right? Mm-hmm. And look, I was much the same. I was with a girl for 10 years. And one of the reasons that we didn't have children when we were both ready to have them was because I didn't feel as though I could afford to give my kids the life that I wanted them to have, which was pretty much a life that I'd had. So, it becomes more difficult. And I think that young people feel a lot more pressure. They feel a lot more pressure to compete. It's very hard to live within your means when you're a young person because there's so much more out there and it's so much more in your face. You're 24/7 surrounded by social media. You're 24/7 surrounded by all these things. And, look at the 90s. We talked about anorexia being a problem because you had size 0 models. Now we talk about other issues. But I think it's a lot more pronounced now than what it was, in the 90s because of how much more social media there is and how much more disconnected people are. I go to friends' houses and, they make dinner and the kids eat the dinner in front of the TV on their smartphone. They don't sit down at the table. All these things can conspire to make it more difficult. I think that we need to glamorize having children. I think we need to glamorize having a family. And we don't do that. There's no sitcoms out there about having a family and having a nice life. We don't have that anymore. There's such a big disconnect. And you listen to the music today, a lot of music is about promiscuity. There's not much music about finding someone and falling in love and, having a family. And I think that's a problem. And look, I can even attest to it myself, even though I've got these various reasons why I'm still single. But, I'm not exactly poor and I'm single and have been for many, many years, right? And I just I date a few girls here and there and like whatever, you know what I mean? Like I'm not taking life too seriously, but I'd like to have children. I think that that's a problem, and I think that we should really work on that and really focus on that. And I will say to you, Rick, because I know you wrote for Jimmy Kimmel, that Bill Maher did a show, and I'll send you the link afterwards. If you stay back after the show, I'll send it to you straight away. Bill Maher did a show just recently where he was actually talking about this issue. But again, I think that media has a lot to say here. Media is the medium that influences people's behavior, their ideas. Will and Grace, for example, was a great show to kind of introduce the idea that gay people are not terrible, horrible, people. We need to humanize them. I think we need to get back to humanizing people having families. But because of the left-right political divide, a lot of people on the left are like, oh, the nuclear family needs to be destroyed. A lot of people on the left are sitting there saying, we should destroy these structures and all that sort of stuff. And so I think a lot of people feel as though that's not the pathway that they should be going down. And that's very damaging, in my opinion.
I don't buy that it's in that that's the main cause. I think the main cause is
one of the contributing causes, surely.
Okay, but I think a more important cause is that, coupling up and forming a family is hard work, right? It's my wife and I have been in couples counseling for 30 plus years, not because we're always fighting with each other, just to do the work and because we got good insurance that pays for it. But
Rick, it wasn't hard work when you first got together, was it? Like if you're 20 and you're dating a 19-year-old girlfriend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you get her pregnant and you need to have a shotgun wedding, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard work. Oh, well, look, I don't know how you do it, but getting a girl pregnant, as far as I'm aware, from my own personal experience, is not terribly difficult.
We did it in a very my wife didn't get pregnant till we'd been together for 8 years.
Well, again, I don't know how you were doing it, but what I'm trying to get at is it's not like you need a PhD. Like this is not a difficult process. Like, like people do this. Well, what I'm getting at is that I think that the idea of having a committed relationship is something that media has turned a lot of people off. I'm not saying that's the only cause, because we see this in Japan, we see this around the world.
What I think the main cause is that there's so much other stuff to do today that that people are over entertained compared to when I was a kid, and it's just easy to kind of sink into your web of entertainment of streaming. Like when you were a younger man, you owned a bar, you were ripped, you maximized your chances of meeting women, right?
Well, yeah, and I was in a long-term relationship, and I can tell you, as entertained as I was, drinking the alcohol and anything else that I may or may not have indulged myself in, I can tell you that a naked girl I found more entertaining than anything else. And if that's not the case for the next generation, we've done something wrong. Maybe it's the lowering of testosterone levels that's occurred. I don't know. But if you're not entertained by a naked girl, there is something wrong with you.
Well,
or you're a girl yourself.
So one thing we've done is that we are in just an avalanche of porn. You can work your ass off. When I was a kid, when I was a teen, I just started lifting weights like crazy and like 2 cans of tuna fish and liquid protein to get, and just all this like to get ripped and to somehow like merit getting a girlfriend.
I love you, Rick. I'm just trying to imagine you trying to like bulk up. I love you so much, Rick, but I'm trying to imagine you bulking up. Like, did it work? Did you have like decent arms or anything? Did anything work for you?
I got my biceps up to almost 16 inches for a guy who's 5'11". That's not bad. I still have 4 or 5% body fat. I'm fucking ripped. I cut scars into myself so I'd look badass. I did a bunch of stuff, and I feel like that's not a lot of. I worked my ass off because for me, getting a girlfriend was was going to be it was my main focus. It was going to be my main achievement.
High priority.
Yeah, and I think that is less so for big segments of the population, because
but there's a problem there, Rick, too, right? Like a lot of guys today, if you go up to a girl and ask her out on a date, and you're going to worry that before it was just like, hey, she might say no and you'll be embarrassed. Whereas now it's like, well, she might say no, and then you're going to be up on a sexual harassment charge. You know, and it's a problem. Look, back when I was a director of, I won't name the company, but a big financial services company here in Australia, I was 27, and as you can probably tell, I'm a very colourful person. So it's not just the sorts of clothes that I wear on the show. When I'm wearing suits, I'm a gay guy in a straight guy's body, because I color coordinate everything from my ties to my socks to everything, right? And I do wear some more colorful outfits. You know, I've got this beautiful beige suit with a purple shirt that I wear and a tie which is purple and beige, and you know, like I just like to be a little bit more colorful and a bit more creative. So anyway, young guy comes in. He must have been, I don't know, 22, 23. Worked for us, and he came in and he was wearing this really nice suit, and he just had a really nice tie and everything. And I said, "Oh, you look fantastic! Like, you know, hey, cool." And then one of the girls came in, she's about the same age, and she was wearing a really nice dress. And I said, "Hey, like, you look amazing today." And all of a sudden, and I was one of the directors of the company. All of a sudden, one of the human resources officers pulled me over, and that afternoon pulled me over and said, "Oh, hey, you mentioned to that girl that, you know, she looked really nice." I was like, "Yeah, you better not do that again." And I said, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean,
So it was perfectly okay for me to give a compliment to the guy, not so okay for me to give a compliment to the girl. And I was actually telling this story. I was just at a friend's birthday party in Sydney on the weekend, and I was telling this story to a couple of people there who actually worked for the New South Wales state government, and they said to me, "Today, you'd be in trouble for saying to the guy that he looked good." And this whole thing with political correctness and that sort of stuff, it's ruined the romance and the intimacy that we have. I don't think that you'd be upset if I gave you a compliment and said, "Oh, hey, your hair looks really nice today." I wouldn't be upset if you said to me, "Hey, Shaquille, that pink shirt you're wearing looks amazing." Why would I be? But what we've done is we've created a generation where they're walking on eggshells all of the time.
Maybe so, but I mean, that's just one of a number of things, like, you know, from your own experience, that if you want to meet women, you have to be unafraid to walk up to a woman and start a conversation, which is frightening, because more times than not, it won't go anywhere, and you'll get a vibe like she's a little creeped out. I mean, and that was the way it worked.
I've never had that, actually. I've never had that experience, Rick.
Well, then you're different from me and my friend. In the 80s, in the 70s, 60s, 50s, it was all, you know, walking up to somebody in a nightclub and, you know, like saying, "Hey, do you want to dance?" And like getting shut down like 5 times in a row, and learning that, you know, you just got to keep going. Now, I don't know that, and I had one friend who never really, you know, became at home with doing that, and was lonely, and he killed himself. Not just
Rick, what you got to do, and I didn't actually realize that. I didn't realize that I was like peacocking. I've always worn colourful clothes, even when I was a kid, right? So I went to a private grammar school. You know, you're going to wear like the tie and the jacket, the this and the that, or during summer you'd wear the shorts with the knee-high socks and stuff. I was like, what sort of British bullshit is this? The only people that wear shorts with socks are the bus drivers. Like, why am I dressed like this? So whenever I wasn't at school, I would wear all these really colourful, exciting shirts. And maybe that's your problem, Rick. I think when I get over to California, I'm going to dress you. It'll be like, you know, Shaq Eye for the straight guy. And
makeover.
I'm going to give you some colourful shirts. We're going to go out on the town in LA, and I think we'll have a ball.
All right. But I've been married for 33 years. So
You can bring her as well. Look. Let me give you some marriage advice, right? Because I've not been married ever, but let me just give you some marriage
This could be
advice.
dangerous.
It's where you guys get it
Just
so
wait for the
badly wrong, right? Even Nick, I'm sure that Nick does this, right?
Yeah.
You're walking along, and you see this gorgeous girl, right?
Mhm.
And you sort of glance at her for a smidgen longer than you should. And then your wife looks at you and goes, were you looking at her? And what do you say? No, I wasn't looking at her. Don't lie. Just say, yeah, of course I was.
I just shrug. I'm like,
And then yeah, but don't do that. Just say, of course I was looking at her. And then when your wife's like looking at you, just go, well, I'm just assessing the options. You're going to play hard to get, even if you've been married for a while. And then she goes, what do you mean assessing the options? You say, well, don't you think I could get a girl like that? Now, what is she going to do? Because if she says yes, well, you've won. And if she says no, then you should ask her why she's dating somebody that she doesn't think's attracted to somebody else. It's perfect. You've got to play with women. Women play with us. You've got to play with them back.
no, she's seen me and she knows me. She knows I can't get anybody else.
That's a you thing. Rick, just because you can't get a date with Taylor Swift doesn't mean that you shouldn't act like you can get a date with Taylor Swift. Because women will act as though they can get a date with, I don't know, whoever's hot today, right? So if they're going to act like that, you should act like that back.
All right, but what I'm saying is that a lot of people they haven't exactly given up. They might be on Tinder, but they're going to leave it to the algorithm, and they might like swipe some people. Okay, but a lot of people are discouraged about coupling up for whatever reason. I think a lot of it is because there's a big distracting world out there where sex is one of a number of things you can like hope for, but it's not the main focus like it was for me as a kid.
So Gen Z apparently are turning off all of those dating apps. But let me ask you a question here. I don't often wear my rings and my jewelry, lots of stuff. And nobody knows who I am. I'm nobody important. Last time I was in LA, I went to like some random bar, and I had like three girls, like two girls sitting on my lap and like one girl sitting next to me, like just sitting at this bar, and they weren't hookers. So like, and I'm not exactly, I don't think I'm ugly. I hope I'm not ugly, but like, I'm not exactly, great looking. I'm not Adonis. You know what I mean? I'm pretty overweight. I've got a big beer belly. And I know you're going to say, oh, yeah, but, you've got this great gregarious personality. Yeah, but you can't tell that in a pub. You can't tell that in some noisy atmosphere. Like, I actually went into this bar. I was sitting there. My mate went to the bathroom. By the time he came back, I had like three girls, like, hanging around. And they were buying me drinks. I didn't have to buy them drinks. They were buying me drinks. It was brilliant.
But bar, right? I think bar culture, is a lot different. You don't go to bars to most people don't go to bars to meet people anymore. I don't think, not the way it was.
Well, yeah, that may well be the case, but like we ended up back at the hotel room. It doesn't matter. So the point is that like you just got to have a little bit of game, and I think there's so many guys that just have no game whatsoever.
That's
true. I'm not exactly successful with women. I'm not trying to say I'm successful with women, right? I'm not married. I don't have any children. I'm a single guy and have been for a long time. And I want to have children. So I'm not trying to say like I am the expert here. But the idea that like chicks are totally like inaccessible, like no, I don't think they are actually.
No, but what I'm saying is right now, the entire world lacks game. I mean, yeah.
Well, I lack game. I've got no experience. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just me.
Yeah, but
if I can do it, any idiot can.
Yeah, but you can tell the world that, but is the world going to listen and start making more couples and more babies? Not according to demographers who look at what's happening and say, no, that we're going to reach peak humanity in 2060 with 9.5 billion people, and then it's downhill from there, which is good in some ways. It will help fight climate change because instead of having
Rick, lose the Californian in you, go back to Colorado, lose that. Don't worry about climate change and population growth. There's plenty of room, there's plenty of resources. Let me say this to you. You talk a lot about porn, which is perfectly fine and reasonable, no problems. I read this on a meme a few years ago that porn gives males an unrealistic expectation on females, on girls. I think I'd agree with that. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I would say that social media gives people unrealistic expectations. Right. Reality.
But specifically porn. They said that porn gives young males an unrealistic expectation on women, right, and on what women are going to be like in the bedroom. And I agree with that. I do. Now, what I will say, and the meme says this as well, is that Disney, and I think they're talking about Disney from our era, not today's Disney, because in today's Disney, everybody's non-binary. But Disney gives women an unrealistic view of males. And I think that that's also true. So I think that we just need to be a little bit more realistic, right?
But that's another should statement. You're saying what we should do versus the way people are now. Like you look at dating.
Well, you guys had Disney back in your days when it was black and white. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, but look at dating shows like The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, all these shows where it's one person has their pick of 30 people, and you look at the track record of those shows. That almost like more than 85% of the time, a lasting match is not made. That even when the shows, the producers have scoured through thousands of candidates to find the best candidates, and they really want the people to get married because otherwise the show.
Rick, come on now. You've worked in media. They're not looking for the best candidates to make these marriages work. They're looking for the best candidates to cause as much drama as possible. That's what they're looking for.
But it pisses people off when you watch a show for like 3 months. You go through the process with them as 30 candidates are whittled down to 2 and then 1, and then they get married, and then you read the story 3 weeks later. No, they decided to part ways amicably. It's like, well, why did I waste 3 months of my life caring about these people? They really do want people to get together, but even when it's tailor-made for people to get together, people don't because
Nick has created a show for me.
You need to ask, why did you waste 3 months of your life watching a stupid
He's
TV
from California. What's he going to do?
Rick, hold on.
Rick, Nick has created a show for me, and he actually rang me one time, middle of the night. He rings me and he goes, Shaquille, I've got a show for you. I said, what do you mean you got a show for me? I went, Nick, get back here. He said, I said, Nick, what do you mean you got a show for me? He goes, look, there's this show with these like older women. It's called Cougars, right? And they've got all these 20-something-year-olds chasing them. And they're all living in this house. And all the guys are trying to impress this chick. So I was thinking, because you're single, and I'm sure that my mother actually put him up to this. I don't know how he's got my mother's phone number, but I'm sure this is what's happened. So Nick says, why don't we do a show like that? We'll call it the Shaq Lorette Show. I'm like, the Shaq Lorette Show? What are you talking about? He goes, look, we can just have a bunch of girls. I said, well, it's just like a reverse cougar. So, like, I'm going to be me at 40 and have, like, a bunch of 20-year-old girls. And he said, yeah, like, what's wrong with that? And I said, well, look, I feel like I could get in trouble for this. But, yeah, why not? That sounds good. Like, how much do I get paid? And Nick said, well, you're not going to get paid anything, but you'll have a house full of 20-year-old girls. Okay, cool. And I think there's a show in that. Now, even if there's not, here's the thing. No, there would be. But here's the thing. Even if there wasn't, I reckon that if I went up to one of the big networks and said, look, we'll fund it, you air it, right? I'm gonna write you a check for $2.5 million. right? We're going to pay for all the production costs, etc. And we put out a casting call. I'd have like a bunch of 20-year-olds lined up around the bloody corner auditioning to be on this show, right? It's not reality. It's bullshit. We all know that.
All right,
Although the show would be fun, and as I'm still the most popular person on Pod TV, Nick, I'm sure that the ratings would go through the roof.
All right, let me come at this a different angle. 100 years ago, the average couple consisted of people, the average married couple, before they became a couple in the cities, lived less than a quarter mile from each other.
That's right.
You just picked from the people around you. And now you can pick from thousands of people, and people's expectations have been raised insanely. And that's the way it is, that people are not settling, which includes settling into relationships.
Have you seen photos of people from 100 years ago when the kids are barely dressed? They've got to share the bath water, like the whole family, all that stuff. But we don't want to go back to that. I mean, romance notwithstanding. Like, what would you do? You can only be romantic once a week after you've both had a bath. What are you going to do?
I'm not being prescriptive. I'm not saying we should do that. I'm just saying this is what's going on now, that with giving people a ton of choice. Like I don't watch these relationship shows. I watched the first one start to finish with my wife, and it was about, they took 5 European soccer players. They brought them to LA. They put them in a penthouse, and they said, you're not allowed to tell the women that we bring to meet you that you're rich and famous. You just have to be regular guys. So they do that. They meet, I don't know, like a dozen women. They pair up. They start relationships, even though they tell the girls that they've got crappy jobs, but they still start pairing up and bonding. And then the big reveal. Oh, by the way, I'm not a restaurant manager. I'm a multi-millionaire, world famous soccer star. Even under those conditions, nobody paired up. The girls were like, I don't think so. It's like people's expectations are super high.
So I can tell you, I've got a friend of mine. So as you guys know, because Nick, I was never going to say it, but Nick was mentioned it the day after I bought the car. So as you guys know, I've got a Bentley convertible. Beautiful. I'm about to upgrade it actually to the new model, but that's besides the point. A friend of mine's got a Rolls Royce convertible, and we were cruising along in it, and just put it in perspective, because the cars are not worth as much in the United States. In Australia, this is a $1.1 million car. So get that off the screen, will you? Take that down. So, and like my one, like the new one that I'm getting is like, 650,000, 700,000, something like that. I've had a lot of girls that are like, oh, hey, like nice car, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't drive it very often. Like I drive it when I drive it like if it's a nice day or something, I'll go out. It's convertible and it's it's nice, and I'm in a semi-rural part of Australia. I will go to the city sometimes in it, but generally speaking, if I'm just driving around, I'm going to a friend's place, something like that, I'm going to drive my normal car, because it's a nightmare when you've got a high value car. You got to find somewhere to park. You got to make sure nobody's going to come and scratch it. All these sorts of things.
Why I drive a piece of crap.
Right. So my mate's got this Rolls Royce. We're cruising around in that, and he's got the same sort of issues. But what I noticed was that girls were a lot more standoffish with the Rolls Royce than what they were with the Bentley, because with the Bentley they'll still come and talk to you, but with the Rolls Royce, like they're just like really standoffish. And he's got a platinum American Express card. I've got a black card, and like not that it matters, but I'm just saying, like people just, I know they have these different attitudes about things. But I will tell you, if I was trying to like chat up a chick, I'm not going to talk about like what I've got. And generally speaking, I'm going to try and act like I've got nothing, because you want somebody to kind of like you for you. But then I've tried that, and then what happens is the girl finds out you got something, like, oh, why'd you lie to me? And I'm like, well, fuck, like, what do you want me to do? Like, it's really hard. And I actually had this experience when I was in Fiji, because it's like 10 years ago. We're over there staying at a resort. I was staying in the presidential suite. at this resort, and it wasn't overly expensive. It was a couple of $1,000 a night or something. And there was this bunch of girls that were there around the pool, and they were saying to me, like, "Oh, what do you do? What do you do for a living?" And I said, "Oh, I do nothing. I'm unemployed. I'm on the dole. I'm on Social Security." They're like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Well, how do you afford this?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm an only child, and my mother pays for it." Like, "What does your mother do?" I'm like, "Oh, she's a nurse, but she borrows money against the house and just lets me go on holidays and stuff because she likes to spoil me because I'm an only child." And like all the girls except for one were absolutely disgusted. So I then went to the bathroom, went to the bar, ordered a cocktail. My mate comes over, not realizing I'd gone to the bar, and this one girl says, "Hey, like your friend, like what does he do?" And he goes, "Oh, he's a hedge fund manager. He's an investment banker." So of course, by the time I come back there, the girls are like, "So investment banking, right?" But like, what do you do? Like, I can't like make out that I've got nothing because nobody's going to believe that. But you have to be careful because you don't want a gold digger either. And I know a lot of very successful women that kind of have the same issue. They don't want to end up with some loser as a guy, and they're really accomplished. They've studied really hard. They've worked really hard to get where they are. But what do? And you can't act like you're some homeless dude and expect to get, your princess. But you also don't want to act like you've got apes for the same reason.
Let me take it back around to politics. So I think there's a bunch of messaging out there. I don't know exactly where it comes from, but that turns people off of people. And to put it in a political context, like Kamala Harris has like 38% approval, pretty low, lower than Biden's, I think. Why? We barely know her. We don't, she doesn't get covered daily. It's just, we just kind of think, okay, she's a VP, she's a lib, people just automatically don't like her, even without knowing anything about her. And if you look at the president.
That's not true, Rick. I'm sorry, that's not true.
I think the average person just doesn't know. I don't know much about her. I know some of her history, but I don't see her in action very much. So so if you don't buy it for Kamala Harris, then buy it for the presidents. I'm looking at the approval ratings of all presidents from the first time they did approval ratings 80 years ago. So Harry Truman starts off above 80%. Eisenhower, 70 to 80% the whole time. JFK, between 60 and 80%. LBJ starts at 80 and then declines to 50. Carter starts at 75%. Gerald Ford, 75. Nixon, 60% for most of his term. And then you get the Clinton hanging in the 50s. Bush, who didn't get the first Bush, is down to the Reagan, people revere him. He's at below 50 for much of. So what you see is, regardless of the president, there's a steady decline in approval. It's more.
Well, I think that's going to change. I think in the next, not this election cycle, but the next couple, I think that'll change. I think you'll start to see more popular people come through, and you'll see younger people come through. Like people who talked about Hakeem Jeffries. He's an absolute superstar on the Democrat side. You need to have the equivalent. I did that asking the girl question for others when I was a preteen. Mark, I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about, but I'm past my preteen days. I think you'll see a superstar. We need to see a superstar on the Republican side as well. But I just want to say this.
Hold on.
I'm responding to you directly. I want to say this about Kamala Harris. You're acting as though you don't know that much about her. That's not true. In the debates, in the debates for the Democratic nomination, she went after Biden pretty hard. She looked quite angry. Okay, she didn't come across very well. She was one of the first people to drop out. Okay. Biden said he was going to nominate somebody who's a black woman. Okay. Which made everybody think, well, you know what? It's not about her qualifications. It's only about her skin color. And she's had the worst of every world, because the first place, she was told she was too angry, she needs to lighten up. In the second place, she starts laughing and being more friendly, and everyone says she cackles too much, right? She's had it really, really hard. And I don't like this because she's a really, I think that she's a very attractive woman. I think she's really good looking. I think that she's a very friendly and personable woman. But also, how many people did she send up to prison for smoking marijuana? You know, how many times did she come down hard on people when she was in charge of the justice system? So I don't think it's a case that people don't know her. People do, and they don't like what they see. And a big part of that is media coverage, because she doesn't get a shot at actually being able to get out there and say something that's wonderful and showing off her personality, because the media twists everything.
I'll buy that. But like, so you say that when we have a superstar in there, that you'll see approval go up. So we had a superstar. We had Obama, young, smooth, and he was below 50% approval for, I don't know, half of his term. Barack Obama, fairly beloved by a big chunk of the population, but lower approval than Nixon.
But that's not true, Rick. But that's not true. See, media says that he was loved by a big percentage of the population, but he wasn't actually. Other than the fact that he was the first black president, which is an amazing thing to have achieved, and was a great step forward in American politics and American history, he wasn't that well loved on a lot of his policies. So you got to talk about things that people.
Let's compare apples to apples. Reagan, super well loved by conservatives. Looking at these charts, lower average approval than Nixon.
Exactly. But why? Because Ronald Reagan had policies that the liberals hated. In fact, his whole platform. Look at the speech that he gave in the 60s for Barry Goldwater, right? Or 60s or 70s, whatever it was, for Barry Goldwater. Beautiful speech. That's what made his name as an orator. But what was he talking about then and throughout the rest of his political career? He was talking about the lowering of taxes, less regulations, constraining liberal ideology. So, of course, he's not going to have a particularly high approval with half the population that are liberal.
But what about Nixon? Nixon was loathed by...
That was then, and this is now, and now we have to go because we're at the hour, and timeshares is coming up.
We're about to talk about sex again, Nick. Hang around, Rick.
Too late. We'll see you then.
Hang around backstage.